Transportation is one of the key factors to consider when designing and managing a supply chain network. A lot of how we think about designing the network is thinking about how we can take advantage of economies of scale to move products as efficiently as possible. To do this, we think about using different transportation modes for different segments. That could be containerizing shipments and sending them on a ship or on a rail car. It could be shipping in what we call full truckload, where we take our product and put it on the entire truckload, less than truckload, or parcel carrier. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the data that we might see to analyze, to do some kind of analysis. This could be analysis that we do to think about how we can manage our carriers and think about transportation. It could also be input data to a model on how we might optimize the design of the network. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet, and I've pulled, this is real data disguised, and I've pulled out just a few of the transactions. And so we have a ship date, that's the date that the load was sent out. And then a tracking number, often called a pro number. This is trucking and parcel carriers in the United States. And so parcel carrier would be somebody that might deliver a product directly to home for maybe an e-commerce or an online order. TL here stands for truckload. Truckload is where I would have the product taking up the entire truckload. And then LTL is the lingo, the acronym that we use for less than truckload. A couple of things about these transportation modes is that they're priced very differently, and that's something I'm going to need to think about when setting up my network. Parcel service is usually priced based on the origin destination or maybe by zone. They might designate certain zones, and if you ship within that zone, it's a certain rate. If you ship across more than one or two zones, the rate changes and goes up. That'll affect how I want to think about designing and where I put my fulfillment centers. Truckload is typically based on a per mile rate. So I might say if I'm going to hire somebody to take a full truckload and charge $2 per mile, whether the truck is full or empty. Less than truckload is almost always charged based on the origin and the destination, where the load starts and where it ends, and the weight. And that's going to actually be a big factor. So let's go back into the spreadsheet and start looking at some of the information that this gives us. So parcel, I have a ship date and I have the freight cost. That's the cost for the load. No matter for the goods that were on it. Something called an accessorial charge is an extra charge, and you'll see here on these less than truckload, one of these less than truckload shipments, there's an accessorial charge for $11, and you can see this can be a big percentage of the overall freight cost. An accessorial charge is an extra charge, and actually if you've ever looked at a transportation contract with parcel carriers or less than truckload carriers, there can be a very, very long list of possible accessorials. It could be if the driver has to deliver it to upstairs, or if there's something that requires two people to lift and they have to send an extra person. There are all kinds of things that could lead to these accessorial charges. And that gives me, going back in, the total delivery charge, and then I might look at my origin DC for a distribution center versus the home DC. The way this is coded here in this database is the origin DC is the place that the shipment actually started at. The home DC is what we would have wanted it to. We assign a customer to a home DC, and in an ideal world, we ship from that home DC. But in this case, you can see that it was desired to have it shipped from Chicago, but it actually shipped out of Atlanta, presumably because the goods weren't available at the Chicago distribution center. This is the origin zip code. For those of you outside the US, that's the postal code or the tracking code associated with the city. The destination city, destination zip code. And so as I scroll over here, I see I have shipment weight, and you see these small shipments, actually pretty large for parcel carriers. Those were parcel carriers. This is an 80-pound load, maybe 40, 35 kilograms. So pretty large load for parcel carrier. And then very large loads for the full truckload shipments, and then somewhere in the hundreds of pounds for the shipment weight. The number of cartons, the expected arrival, and the arrival date. I could use this information to analyze, are there certain carriers or there are certain DCs that I'm shipping out of that are contributing to more late orders. So you can see here that we expected this shipment to arrive on the 4th, and it arrived on the 5th, so it was late. I made a calculation here to whether or not it was late, whether or not it shipped out of the assigned or the preferred facility. And then something that I might want to do if I'm thinking about trying to populate the data I need for a network optimization model to design my network, I might go in at my historical data and look at what it cost me to ship either per mile or per pound or by unit shipped. And this is where I might get the data to fill in the costs on moving goods from a particular distribution center, fulfillment center to a particular customer, and that data analysis would feed into my network optimization. So that's an overview of transportation. I can analyze data to feed into a supply chain network model. I can think about the different modes and trying to take advantage of those. The biggest issue with transportation is trying to think of the larger mode, the truckload shipments you can see back here in the spreadsheet, much lower cost per mile, and much higher for the less than truckload. So trying to take advantage of those economies of scale is one of the key factors in designing a supply chain network.